Much, Chelsea. It's always a pleasure. Today we have a fun way to wrap up this semester's dollars and cents. Talking about holiday finances. Sometimes this can be fun. Sometimes this can be not so fun. Depends on how you look at it. So we're gonna kind of take a look at this from a couple different perspectives, a couple different angles. I have a couple resources here too that I'm going to show you. These are like I was just mentioning this to Chelsea before we started the officially started the presentation. I created this a few years ago, and and it was great. It's great kind of looking back on this because I haven't actually presented this particular session in a while, and looking at the resources that are available with this. This is going to be kind of fun because like you actually get to like rate your friends and the people in your life, because the reality is like really what you have to kind of think about when it comes to thinking about the holidays, thinking about giving, and thinking about like having these extra additional expenses, um, is how to prioritize things, because like that's really kind of the study of economics, like just in total, is like you have unlimited wants. Like you have unlimited, I have an unlimited desire to give to my family. Like if I had enough resources, then I would be able to just give everybody everything that they wanted, like a new house and the Lexus with the bow on and all that kind of stuff. Like I would totally do that if I had the capability to do that. But the reality of everyone's situation, regardless of how wealthy you are, is that's not always the case. So then it comes down to like decision making. And when it comes down to decision making, you can do it impulsively and on the fly and end up in financial, not necessarily financial strain, but, at least, somewhat challenging financial situation. Or you could put a little bit of thought into it and try to, be a little bit more analytical, be a little bit more thoughtful, and try to think about how to do this in a way that will benefit you kind of strategically. So this is a non-denominational presentation. I will constantly refer to holidays, and you could fill in whatever holiday you choose to. Some of the core components that we are going to be kind of incorporating here are gift giving and other things that are associated with traditional holidays, regardless of whatever holidays that you choose to celebrate, such as travel, which is not really a thing anymore. Uh, Decorations, eating, going out, like all these other kinds of things, like big meals, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that goes into this. Like there's a lot to kind of think about. So hopefully, again, this will be a little bit of a fun topic. For some reason, whenever I'm in presenter mode, I struggle to see the chat box. But if you have questions, feel free to either unmute yourself or throw them in the chat. And Chelsea, you can feel free to interrupt me at any point as we kind of go through here. So we're going to reference a few things, and I'll show you a couple cool little worksheets that I created in a Word document that kind of can at least help give you some structure around what you're doing. So who doesn't love giving stuff to people, right? Like that's usually the best part about the holidays isn't getting great gifts, it's giving gifts. Like, cause that's where we really get a lot of our value. Um, so here's me. This is my contact information. Feel free to send me an email directly after the presentation or at any time if you have any questions about it. Here's our agenda for today. These are some of the topics we're going to kind of go over. Talking about your numbers, knowing your numbers, lists, making lists. Like I'm a big list person. Like lists help me out tremendously. And it's before you even start to think about the numbers, like thinking about the list, I think is actually kind of a more important priority or a higher priority, because that can really kind of help drive the numbers. And you'll see what I mean when we're talking, when we come to that point. Um, Setting boundaries, like that's another kind of thing that we are going to discuss here about like understanding the reality of your situation. As I mentioned at the beginning, like if I had the capacity to be able to give unlimitedly to my friends and family, I would totally do it, but that's not my scenario or my case. So knowing how to prioritize stuff and how to set like boundaries, especially if you're a student right now. Typically when you're a student, your financial situation is very limited, mainly because like you're spending all your time studying and not any time working. And you got to be making that money to be able to spend it, and you're not at that point quite yet. Again, I'm not trying to assume anyone's financial situation. So we're going to, again, talking kind of general, broad terms here. Cost reduction tips and strategies, that's always a big part of it. And how to avoid the holiday debt cycle. Like that's where people really kind of can get hung up in this, and we want to try to not do that. Okay, so first thing first is know your numbers. All right, so this is where the lists come into play. List. All right. If anybody's ever tuned in to any of my presentations, I like to focus real heavily on like cash flow cycles and having sources, identifying your sources of income, identifying your expenses before you even start plugging in the numbers. Kind of know what and where things are coming from and where they're going to need to go in the future. Having savings set aside for the holidays is really very valuable because, again, it's coming. This is one of those things that I talk about in my budgeting presentation that is a common thing that ends up really kicking people in the backside if you're not prepared, which is called a periodic expense. Whenever you're managing your budget or your cash flow cycle, you have your common expenses, things that happen on regular monthly cycles or weekly cycles. Super easy to kind of understand when they're coming and manage them on the daily grind. But things that can really kind of throw you off are the stuff that don't come around. Even if you do know they're coming, like they can still kind of knock you back a little bit. So I have a really good strategy in my house in terms of building savings for holidays. We have a savings account in my house that's just called gifts, and every single paycheck that I get, $50 goes right into that gifts, because I know that I'm going to end up spending that money, and either I'm going to have it saved or I'm not. And if I don't, then I'm going to have to find it from somewhere. And I don't want to pull from my emergency savings. I don't want to have to sell, an investment out of something that's over here trying to help me build wealth. And I certainly don't want to go into debt. So if I can avoid it. Again, we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. The other thing too is also kind of knowing where that's going. As I mentioned, like typically it's not just presents and things like that for other people. It's around all of these other things. This is going to be a really very interesting holiday season, and a lot of what we've been doing recently has been really different and interesting because of the pandemic and restrictions and limitations on travel, and not wanting to be exposed or expose other people to potential spread of the pandemic, of the virus. So a lot of this is going to allow us to actually shift some of our traditional holiday spending or expenses to other categories. Like if you were planning to go take a trip back home, wherever that may be, maybe instead of doing that, you can actually increase some of your gift budget a little bit more, because you're not going to have to buy a plane ticket, or you're not going to have to pay for gas and lodging and stuff like that. Um, these things are all going to kind of change as we go through. Same with like food and entertaining, like that just isn't as much of a thing anymore. Or you can think about ways to do it a little bit more creatively, like the way that Chelsea does. We used to do these events in person, and lunch was always a big draw, and food is always a big draw, and food is always a big kind of part of holiday seasons and things like that. However, now with the way things are, instead of maybe like gathering around for a big table, you do like a Zoom meal, and you help pay for other people's DoorDash meals and things like that. Like, so there's a bunch of different things to do. Another thing that people do try to focus on a lot around the holiday time is charitable contributions and donations, not just with your money, but also with your time. And you have to kind of think about that, because your time is an asset that you have access to, and you can use it to either be making more money or um, giving to others, who may be less fortunate. Okay, so let's take a look at kind of an example here. Making your list. We definitely want to make your list. We have, everyone you plan to give a gift to. Everyone goes into a bucket or a tier. This is kind of like something that I thought about. And when I was doing research for creating this like a few years ago, this was kind of a common theme or way to do this. So you have a couple ways that you can kind of look at this. You can either like go up and build up, or you can limit yourself and try to build down into your plan. And what I mean by that is, whenever you're looking at different expenses, you can either basically like create your gift list. Like this is my gift. These are the gifts that I want to buy for all of the people that I've identified that I need to buy gifts for. And you already know what you want to get them. You already know what that costs. And so basically what you're doing is you're adding up all of the costs that are associated with what you're already planning to get. And then you need to find that money from some source somewhere, whether that's from your savings account, from a check that you already have coming in, whatever the source is. Hopefully not debt. Again, hopefully not debt. Or you can work top down, which is kind of the way that you want to think about creating a budget, just kind of to begin with, which is this is the amount of money that I have to spend. Now I got to try to fit everybody within that dollar amount. Okay. And I will be honest with you, not everyone in my life is equal. All of the people that I want to buy gifts for are not, as equally valuable to me. And so I do weight that differently. My wife and I are first time parents. So we had a baby girl in February, and now she is pretty much like 90% of our gift budget, because she's our daughter and she's adorable and I want to buy her a lot of stuff and she's really cute. So um, that means that my buddy in Hawaii that I usually get a t-shirt for or something like that, like his t-shirt's now going to be a bumper sticker, like that kind of stuff. So, when the budget is limited, and that's the only way that you can really try to help control your spending is if you limit your budget on the top end. Um, that's how you can kind of try to manage this. But again, it starts with making your lists, and this is where it gets very helpful. Okay, so here's this is just the top of it. I will go ahead and show you. Cancel. Let's see. New share. Okay, so this is a worksheet that I created a couple years ago. It's not like interactive like an Excel, so it doesn't actually do the totaling for you. But basically what you do is you start with how much you can afford total up here, right? So if I have, I don't know, let's say $1,000 in my savings account specifically earmarked just for Christmas, just for holiday. I put that number in there. Okay, so from there, then I can break out, how much, how many tier one family members do I have? How many tier two family members and friends do I have? This is where it gets a little bit easier breaking these things down, is like, tier three, tier four. So this is like the mailman, the kids teacher, the coworkers, white elephant gifts, that kind of stuff. And then really what you do is you just kind of try to work with your numbers, like work within your numbers. Again, there are two ways you can do it. Is just start by like listing the names of the people who absolutely want to really buy something super nice for. If you already have something in mind, you can put that here. Again, having a sheet or a form like this doesn't necessarily restrict your spending, or doesn't necessarily like completely dictate what you're going to do. This is about giving yourself some sort of a framework to work from. Okay. And so again, like, think about what you're trying to do in anytime you're thinking about financial planning is, being conservative, like in your estimates. So that's conservative with a little c, not like politically conservative or liberal, but like conservative with a little c, which means that you always want to know your top end of your spending, possible spending, and the absolute low end of your potential income source or whatever, from whatever cash flow you're working with. So if I know that this is the absolute maximum amount that I have available to spend, then I can break everything down between there. And making the list, that's why, like, again, like what you're buying and the price are going to be helpful kind of later on in the process. But really, like, this is the same thing that a way I think about like creating my household budget is, it's the names of the people. Like if I can at least identify all of the people that I know that I'm going to buy a gift for or would like to buy a gift for, um, that really helps me get a much easier framework around how much I'm going to be able to spend on each person. Good best practice too is always include an extra one or two people that that's on the bubble. like have like a blank generic like tier 3 friend, because there's always going to be that one person that you might not be quite as close to, but they are big holiday people and they decide to send you a nice little gift in the mail, and then you're like, oh, okay, totally didn't get you anything. So it's always good to kind of have something like relatively inexpensive that's just kind of sitting there in your pocket, and you can be like, oh yeah. Again, if that matters to you, like if that's something that's important to you. Um, okay, so this is one sheet. Again, you don't have to use it. It's just something to kind of help you frame what you're looking at. And this is a crucial one. I still use this in my house, and a good way to start this list is with your card list. If you send out holiday cards to people, if you're still young and you don't do that, like if you're an undergraduate here and your parents may do that, it's not a bad thing to start to think about, because it's a good tradition to get in the habit of. Um, Now, around setting boundaries, you want to make sure that you're realistic with your financial situation. That's what this whole thing is about: is creating a situation where you feel good about what you're doing, and you're not feeling remorseful or regret later on after. When you have like this, like a lot of times this is a common, psychological cycle around the holidays, is like everyone is in the mood, in the spirit, whatever, for whatever it is that you're celebrating, and then all of a sudden you go overboard, and then you have that kind of holiday hangover, like that holiday financial hangover. And if you go into debt, then we're going to talk about that again kind of towards the end. That could get a little bit kind of overwhelming or depressing if you're not careful. um, but you want to make sure, especially as a student, that you're communicating with your family members about realistic expectations. So, um, as I mentioned, my wife and I just had our first child. We're trying to. We decided that my wife would be a stay-at-home mom, and she was making almost as much as I was in our household budget, and so we've had to make some significant concessions in our household spending. And we know that holidays are going to be one of those things where we're going to be making one of those major concessions. So I have a sister that has 3 kids, and so we've already communicated with my sister that like we're not going to buy each other anything, and we're only going to buy stuff for each other's kids. So like we're going to get some nice thing for my niece, or my nephew and my 2 nieces, and my sister's going to probably get something nice for my daughter, our daughter, even though she's really little and won't remember any of this yet. um but we've already kind of had that conversation and discussion, because for us, like our financial situation is very different than it was in years past, where we had the capacity or ability to buy nice things for each other. So again, it's nothing to be shameful of. It's just realistic. Like if you're a college student, you may not have like an extra like $300 to drop on you know a set of Bose earphones that your mom really wanted, or your whatever. So just be realistic and make sure that you're communicating with people. Now, if you're in a situation where money is very, very tight, our society places a lot of stress and pressure on parents, especially around the holidays, in terms of having like this expectation, other kids in classes and things like that. You want to make sure that you are being honest with your family and communicating and setting expectations. Maybe it's that in your house you get one gift as opposed to like a whole bunch of gifts and things like that. And I know that this is really difficult to do, but it's that keeping up with the Joneses mentality. And marketing and marketers are very, very good at this. And it's way different than when I was young, in terms of like, this is the coolest thing commercial on, I have to have this Furby or whatever it is, or the NES, or I don't even know. Like, I'm probably dating myself with those references, but um, now it's way different. It's like, stuff that I've never even heard of somewhere on TikTok that is like the coolest thing that everybody absolutely must have. I don't even know, but it's going to be devastating if you don't get that one thing. And, it's hard to decouple, especially like a kid or somebody, from that kind of mindset. But again, if you don't want to put yourself in significant financial distress or strain, um, for the purpose of giving a holiday gift, if that makes sense. Um, so here's another thing that I really love. This is a different worksheet that I love. And again, Chelsea has these available for you guys. And this now of going through this again has reminded me that maybe I should go ahead and turn these into an Excel spreadsheet, because that would probably be a little bit more helpful. So this one is a good one. This one's more of the actual budget itself, and it is accounting for all of your sources of funds, like where your money is coming from, and where your money is actually going. And it's pretty comprehensive, because this is the stuff that will jump up and bite you. You know, like every single month, I'm not accustomed to going out and buying rolls of gift wrap or extra boxes or postage. Nowadays, some of this stuff maybe is a little bit more common, since we're doing a lot more via UPS and the mail system, things like that. But this is trying to account for, or at least highlight, things that you may not have thought of. It's more than just the gifts, is what I'm saying here. It's more than just the gifts. So again, this is not a completely comprehensive list, but these are at least things that you want to try to be mindful of. And whenever you're looking at creating a budget or a budget system, remember the budget is kind of supposed to be a little bit of a framework. Like, it's about the future, it's about what you're planning to do. If you have actual data or things that you have done in the past, that's helpful, very helpful in projecting out into the future. This is like how modeling works. And this is a very same concept that works in your household budget. So this is how much I plan to spend. This is how much I actually spend. This is what the difference is. And so I kind of have a feeling for whether or not at least going to be in the ballpark. And if this difference is way off, there's not much you can do about it, right? Like, having a budgeted amount is only helpful if you stick to it. So that's where, like, kind of the discipline, it comes into play. And then what this really can help you with is next year, right? And how can I make the system or process better next year? Because that's the whole thing about periodic expenses like holidays, is no matter how much you prepare or not, it's going to come back again. Like, unless we have a complete collapse of our society, which feels like might actually happen sometimes in today's economy, um, it's going to happen again next year. You know, same with people's birthdays or anniversaries, or things like that. And if you want to do something big and special, if you're a very high income earner, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with going out and buying the Lexus, like, and wrapping it up in a bow and having it in somebody's yard. And maybe one of you have had that experience before. Like, I know, you know, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Um, but trying to do it better, trying to get better using tools like these, is how you're able to um, at least not be surprised and not have that, like, holiday hangover, that holiday budget hangover. So again, this is another really cool little tool that I like to use. Um, and I should probably put this into an Excel spreadsheet to make it a little bit easier. But that's a fun one. Um, it's fun for me. I'm like nerdy like that though. Like, it can be kind of depressing and sad for for people when they're like, "Man, I want to get really nice stuff for people." And I talk about that in my psychology of spending class. Using money as a sign of love, or buying physical material things as a sign of love and affection and appreciation. It's something that we do in our society quite a bit. Um, but if you're doing that to the point where you're leaving yourself financially vulnerable, then at some point you're going to end up having to go back and rely on this other person, and like, things can get really shaky or dicey if you do that too often. Okay, so now that's all the sad and depressing stuff. Here's other things that you can think about too, is how to reduce costs. So, like, that's another big thing too whenever it comes to shopping, is like trying to find good deals. Electronic gift cards, regifting junk like that scented candle. I know that I forget if it was like Saturday Night Live or somebody did a commercial about a scented candle that would just go around from office to office, and it was really funny. Um, don't be too proud. If there's something that you get and you don't love, like, give it away to somebody else. That's all right. If you really are looking to be thoughtful about your gifts and you really have a very, very limited budget, try to think outside the box. There's a million different blogs and ideas on Pinterest and online about like how to create gifts from scratch and make things on a budget. And if you have a specific talent or skill, then you can maybe like do the old back rub coupons and that kind of stuff. Think about maybe doing family gifts instead of individual gifts. That's a good way to kind of save. Or do maybe like a white elephant or secret Santa kind of program if you have like a really big family or really big office or something like that. I know we do that here at our office, and it turns out to be it turns out to be a lot of fun. It's very cost effective and it turns out to be a lot of fun. So with that, you just do I don't know if you've heard of White Elephant, but basically you have like a dollar limit and everyone buys a gift, and most of the gifts are funny or silly or alcohol in my team. Um, and then everyone just exchanges them. Everyone opens a gift, and then the next person, the next number in the line, has the chance to either steal a gift from somebody else that's already been opened, or open up a new gift, and it becomes kind of fun. It's like a game and a gift exchange. Again, there's a million different examples out there. As students too, know and understand that there's like tons of different like discounts and resources available for you guys in terms of like school related stuff and electronics, and you can use student discounts, like on Amazon and all kinds of different things. So not a bad time to be a student and try to do some shopping. um Cost reduction tips for traveling. Again, like this is like, I guess the cost reduction trip is have a global pandemic to where you're not allowed to leave your house. That's a good way to reduce your costs. I know my gas budget has gone down significantly since this pandemic has started. And think about just different options when times are more normal. Video conferencing and ways to connect to family members virtually or digitally. Is definitely cost effective and it's safer in today's times. And during normal times, though, like there's nothing that says that you have to have your, you know, holiday get together during the actual holiday. You can actually like plan to do something in February when there may be, better deals and rates on things. And there's also like travel rewards and things like that that can kind of help mitigate or reduce your cost. Um, Okay, so costs for reducing, or I'm sorry, tips for reducing costs around some of these ancillary things, like these other expenses that we see. Repurposing old household items. Again, Pinterest has like really changed my life because my wife loves Pinterest and she finds all kinds of ideas for like crafting and repurposing and reusing and all these other kinds of things. I know that there's a lot of different like you know people that are very, very good about strategizing, thinking about next year right after the current holiday. That's a great strategy, is like, go clear out Target's, uh, you know, decorations and um, card stock and all that kind of stuff. Wrapping paper, that was the term I was looking for. Um, the day after Christmas or the weekend after Christmas, things like that, or whatever holiday. For food and entertaining, potlucks, try to think about appetizers instead of meals. If you're looking at meeting up with some old friends, think about doing coffee instead of a dinner. Like these are common things that you're able to help reduce costs. For charity, things like that. Obviously, your time does have value, especially as a student. But instead of like, having to write a check to your favorite charity, maybe you donate some of your time. If you have old items that somebody else may be able to reuse or repurpose, that's a good time to kind of think about that as well. Okay, so the last thing that I'll talk about before we open it up for any questions or tips that you all may have or want or would like to share is, being cautious about the holiday debt cycle. So this is something that happens kind of regularly. especially if you're if you're struggling financially, but you still want to give your family a really good holiday experience, is I got no money saved up. My paycheck isn't big enough to pay for all of the stuff that I need to buy. So, but I do got this nice little credit card in my wallet, and I go ahead and just put all of my holiday spending on those credit cards. You'll see, honestly, we see this at our on our credit card balances here at the credit union. Like we get reports and we see reports on like when balances are really high and when they go, get paid off. And you can see it, like you can see it clear as day. Huge spike around the holidays, holidays, and then tax return comes, and basically all of that, those balances go back down to low to near zero. Um, that's a very common thing to do, is people just basically pay ahead their tax refund, tax return. um, if you continue to do this over and over again and you don't break the cycle, by like saving over time ahead of time, um, eventually you'll end up paying a lot of interest on things. So have a separate account. Again, this is what I do in my house. Try to have a separate account for just for holiday spending, just for birthdays and gifts. I have a whole, it's just called gifts, and that includes holidays and birthdays. And every week, every month, I mean, sorry, every paycheck that I get, I put a little bit into that, 50 bucks, 50 bucks, 50 bucks. And over the course of the year, it builds up. And then when that money comes out, I don't feel really bad about it. And if I need to go over, if it's something special or extraordinary and I need to go over, it's okay, because it's not really a whole lot. It's not going to be like $1,200 or $1,000 that I'll be going over. It'll be like maybe a few bucks, or 50 bucks or 100 bucks, something that I'm reasonably able to manage. So the whole thing around goal setting, the whole thing around financial planning, the whole thing around planning for like the holidays, is to identify things that are coming that you know about, that you can try to manage or mitigate, and then try to do it. It's like, having the plan won't make you stick to it, like I mentioned earlier, but it will at least give you something to be a reference towards. So like if you're like, okay, I have my immediate family members price set, gift budget set around $100 per person. um I see this thing that would be absolutely perfect for my mom, and it's $300. Like, can I absorb that? I probably can. Yeah, I can probably do that. I'm way over here, so I'm gonna have to like, maybe hand make my sister a cheese ball or something, instead of, getting her $100 gift. But, by having this stuff pre-done or planned out in advance, it gives you some kind of aspect to what this is going to look like when it's all said and done. Again, you really want to try to avoid this, and you really want to try to avoid that hangover, that like feeling of like regret, because usually come the first of the year, that's when everyone tries to get themselves back into physical shape and fiscal shape, because of a impulsive and potentially gluttonous holiday season, on present company included in that. And it's okay to do. Like, I'm not here to say that like if you do any of these things you're a bad or terrible person by any means. We're kind of conditioned to do this in our society based on the way that our holidays and society work. It's good. It gives people jobs. Like when people go out and spend money, that gives people jobs. It's a good thing. But you just don't want to leave yourself in a financially vulnerable position. That's the key. So remember the reason for the season. Like, that's the thing. Again, regardless of what holiday you choose to celebrate, or even if it's not any kind of like religious anything, if it's more of like just a secular celebration, like, the thing about holidays is it's not about gifts, it's not about stuff, it's about being with people that you love and being thankful for, you know the fact that you're still alive, and that your friends and family members are still alive, and you can be with them and talk to them, whether it's through a silly screen like this or actually in person and give somebody a hug. Like, um it is about the moments, it's about the memories, it's about the people, not about the stuff. And if you can think about that, and I know it's easy to say that now, and I know it's a great feeling or an awesome feeling when you find that perfect thing for somebody, and it's something that they were absolutely love, and it's something they would never buy from themselves, but it's going to like just absolutely blow them away. Like, that's the gift. Like that's why you do it. I always talk about this. Like I'm super involved in my community outreach committee here at the credit union, and I think the byproduct is helping other people, but the motivation for me is it makes me feel good. Like I do that for a selfish reason. Like you give gifts to people for selfish reasons, not because you want them to have it. It's because it makes you feel good about it. Like that's the thing, is it makes you feel good to give to somebody else. And so the byproduct of that is somebody else being happy, but really it's about you being happy. And that's fantastic. Like that's really a wonderful and very admirable thing, that most people share, like a trait that most people share. You just need to be cautious that you're not putting yourself into financially vulnerable situations. Um, so that's my kind of thought or philosophy around that. Here's some information. If you're a member of the credit union, you can meet with a person from Balance, or if you go to vacu.org/educators, you can meet with myself or one of my coworkers. For that educators one, you don't have to be a member to sign up for that. My contact information is definitely on the screen right there. I will stop sharing and be glad to address any questions, comments, concerns, or ideas. If anybody has any tips or ideas or things they like to do around the holidays that have been helpful for them, please feel free. Again, I try to make this non-denominational, but if you celebrate a different holiday than the one that I do a bad job of not referencing, um, please feel free to share.
So thank you for talking about this. I'm actually in the middle of online shopping right now. Um, but my question is, since you are at the credit union,
Mhm.
I'm looking into opening a new account there and becoming a member. So you mentioned a gift account.
Mhm.
Could you go more in depth on what to look into that? Like if I wanted a gift account or something similar that would help build over time that I can just throw money into when I get a paycheck, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that actually used to be a fairly common thing. It was a specific thing called a Christmas Club account. Like that was actually used to be the name of this particular type of thing, where it actually kind of worked more like a certificate of deposit. Whereas like if you took money out before like November, you would actually get penalized for it, um, which that creates a lot of friction from you going in and getting your own money. We don't actually do that particular type of account anymore, but what we do have is like at my credit union and many others, they offer savings, just a traditional regular savings account that has no minimum balance or monthly fees. If you have an account with no minimum balance or monthly fees, then you can label it or title it pretty much anything you want. And so, like if I go onto my online banking, I mentioned this before in other classes here with dollars and cents, is I have like 6 different savings accounts, 7 different savings accounts, and one of them is labeled gifts. It's just labeled on my online banking gifts, and I every payday I used to have it set up to be done automatically, but now I actually manually go in and do it because I've actually done a lot to get myself off of automating my finances. I know that most financial educators and people that talk about it say automate everything because then you don't miss anything or whatever. um, I take a different approach to that. I think that it's more important to pay attention and actually manage it like more hands-on. So every payday, I have a car savings account for my insurance premium and any additional car costs. I have a emergency savings account. I have a goals or a gift account, and a vacation account. I got a couple other savings accounts, but those are the ones that every single paycheck get funded every single time I get paid. Um, so it's literally just labeled uh, my online banking gifts, and so I just put a little bit of money in, and then when I'm doing my budget, when I'm creating my budget, I actually have my funding those accounts as an expense on my budget. So out of my paycheck, every single paycheck, which I get paid twice a month, um, out of every paycheck, I have $50 going into my gift account. And so that is actually considered an expense out of my, and then as soon as that's an expense, then the money that I always look at it in my mind, the money that's in that account is already been spent. So even though I technically still have it, it's already been spent because it's earmarked specifically for holiday gifts and birthday gifts and things like that. So yeah, that's the way that I do it. So that way, like whenever I take money out of that account and actually go spend it on something, I don't need to re-record it. I don't need to put it back into my budget or anything like that because it's already been spent. Now, I will have a separate sheet or a separate like thing to track like what I actually do. It's not the paper one that I have here that's the holiday budget, but it's something similar. And it's in kind of a more comprehensive workbook that I've made, like an Excel workbook. And I believe for the first session that I did with you all this semester, Chelsea, I shared that college spreadsheet, and you're feel free to share that as well. You can use that.
Yes, that's available on our resources page, and I'll be sure to include that link in the chat box so you all are able to access that.
So, yeah, I guess yeah, Jack, for your question, then it's a regular savings account with no fees or minimum balance that I just have designated myself to that. And here's another good best practice too. Like if you like, I work at the credit union. I love the credit union. I have all my accounts here at the credit union. But if you have trouble, like if like a lot of this is about self-discipline too. Like if I put money into my savings account, it's really easy to go in and pull money back out of my savings account. If it helps, it's not a bad idea to keep savings goal accounts at a different bank, like at a different credit union or bank. So like if you have your checking account with you know, Truist or whatever, or Town Bank or Wells Fargo or whatever, do your saving at the credit union, because then that money is over here and you don't see it. It's like another kind of like, you can get to it, but it's just another like psychological barrier, I suppose. Or online banks, like look at online banks. Like if you have your checking account with the credit union, you could do like online savings with Ally Bank or Capital One or Discover Bank or whatever. And again, those perceived barriers are helpful in preventing you from taking money from yourself. Really is the way I look at it.